if there's one common theme that's popping up with most athletes right now, it's that they're getting success wrong. Here's what I mean by this. Most athletes think that it's about doing the complex things. Maybe you're in this situation where you think you have to level up all the time consistently. When the truth is this, you can actually be more successful than 90% of your competition if you do these basics right. And in today's episode, we're going to help you understand exactly what we did with an NFL player to help him get that 90% ahead of everybody else simply by doing the basics. We're going to give you the 5 things that you can do as well and how he was getting ahead and how ultimately he stole his starting spot. So in today's episode, we're going to cover these 5 things. And most importantly, get your notebooks out because this one will be a good one. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Difference Maker podcast. Your hosts Matt and Chris Calderoni, back with another one which will be great. Excited for this one simply because it's one that I feel like a lot of times gets maybe misplaced or misunderstood, I should say, where, you know, we often think as athletes we need to do these overly complex things to be successful, when really what we're starting to learn throughout the work that we've been doing with athletes, it's the simple things that allow them to be successful in sport.
Well, it's always doing the simple things, but with focus and purpose and intensity. Like we're going to jump into today. We have 5 basics, I think, that we're going to attack, right? So, but it's all to do with the purpose and intensity behind doing the simple things.
Yeah.
And doing them over again in the right way, right?
And it's kind of what the segue is for this week. Leads into a little story with one of the NFL players that we work with. And, you know, it's funny because I was talking to him in a session a couple weeks ago. This really started to first come up, and now it's been manifesting in a positive way. And he goes, Matt, you know, I'm learning something. So he's on this big mission right now for himself to essentially rewrite his career. That's where he's at, which totally normal for a lot of athletes, especially as they keep progressing. They need to keep re-innovating, reinventing, and so on. So he goes, but I'm learning something that I didn't really notice last year when I came to OTAs. OTAs are like the pre-off season, if you will, or the official off season of NFL players, but it's like it happens starting in April and usually goes right up to a couple months before the season. They break for a month, come back for preseason, and then they start the season. So he goes, I'm learning something in OTAs. He goes, before I used to be the guy who would come in and try to do these over complex things like, you know, extra this, extra that, extra this, extra that. He goes, which there is a time and a place for. But he goes, I'm realizing something, and I had this kind of understanding this past week. He goes, by doing the basics consistently, I'm able to outperform 90% of my competition. Because he goes, this is what usually happens. He goes, so Monday and Tuesday for the group are usually the worst days. And he said, because unfortunately, or fortunately, how you look at it, on the weekends, these individuals are going out and they're basically prioritizing partying instead of recovery. So he goes, immediately on Thursday afternoons, some of them take off, they go to their places, they do what they got to do. He goes, Monday and Tuesday, Monday, most definitely people's heads are in a trash can, they're puking, right? From a tough weekend. He goes, on a Tuesday, there's some of them like that. He goes, Wednesday and Thursday, super high intensity, and then it's a repeated cycle. He goes, so this past week, I really observed it where I was coming in and they were just randomly pop quizzing us on the playbook. And he goes, there's a leaderboard for who basically is the most consistent with it, that they'll just randomly pop quiz you and then they grade you. He goes, I've finished first. And the coaches are starting to say it. And he goes, players are coming up to me asking, so how are you doing it? Like, what are you doing? He goes, I've just dedicated an hour a day to studying the playbook. They go, from what days? He goes, Monday through Saturday, and Sunday I break. He goes, some guys were asking me though, like, what about on the weekends? And he goes, what do you mean? He's like, well, the majority of us are out, you know, doing what we need to do, partying, having downtime, reload time, whatever they want to call it. He goes, no, I don't do that. I stay home and I focus on my recovery. It's part of what I'm getting paid for.
See, for all of you thinking that, you know, as soon as you get out of school, pop quizzes don't exist anymore, they're going to happen.
So he goes, you know, what's interesting about it though, Matt, is that I am getting ahead of 90% by doing the basics, the sleeping, studying my playbook, hydrating well. He goes, because if I look at it and the way that the math works, the reason this is so important is because it's 2 things. Number 1, it's development. But number 2, it's also with the energy that you have. So if you break it down and you think about it for a sec, so think of this guy. So this guy's having 2 better days per week in the gym, right? That Monday and Tuesday where others are falling off, he's able to do what he has to do just by showing up, just by showing up. Nothing more than just showing up and doing the work at 100% intensity. So it's 2 days. Plus, he's got a Saturday or a Friday that he's recovering, a Saturday he's recovering, and a Sunday he's recovering. So that's now 5 days more that he has of total development, if you will, and energy. You times that by 4 weeks in a month, that's 20 extra days per month than 90% of the team. Mm-hmm. You apply that over the course of 3 months, that's 60 days more than the rest of the team. That's 2 months more of work than the rest of the team is doing on the basics, where you're not having to play catch up. You multiply that over a year, I mean, it takes a life of its own. The point behind this, though, is that I think a lot of times in sports, we believe or would like to believe it's these crazy next level things you have to do, when in reality, if you can really master the basics well, mm-hmm. you have to understand that your environment is often going to be the ones that are underperforming compared to you.
And I do wonder, and maybe, I don't know if you guys spoke about this or not, but he can't be the only one on his team that is like they're going hard 5 days a week. I wonder what percentage of professional athletes, like taking that out of that one team, out of football and just in general, whether it be hockey, soccer, baseball, whatever. But I wonder what percentage of players, because it can't just be, one out of how many players on a team? It can't be. I wonder what percentage is like.
Well, again, though, I would say it's the minority.
Oh, well, no, 100%. Right? But I'm just curious, like even on winning teams, I wonder how many are in that category and how many are in the other category.
I think it shows, like just look on your football Sundays, look at your game days, mm-hmm. right? Like, let's talk about it for a sec, because I think this is something, and this is the secret behind, by the way, what people are getting, or athletes are getting wrong about success, is that you often think that you have to do the complex things. But before we get into what this secret is, if you look at it and you think about it, the only times you need to get complex are when you think that you're making up because you're not doing the basics.
Yeah.
So you feel like you're behind and you have to do all these extra things now to get to where you are, when really, if you just do the basics right consistently, it kind of becomes simple.
Because that's all that this player was doing. He was showing up. So it wasn't anything crazy. You show up at the gym. The only thing.
Well, we're going to talk about the 5 things, right?
Right. But what I'm saying is, though, out of that week, he just showed up for the 5 days.
Showed up every day with intent. Yeah.
And the basics.
He was energized. So there's 2 things that this leads to, though, when you can master or I should say, keep the discipline behind the basics. It's going to allow you to do these 2, but you're going to have more energy than the majority of your team. And I know it's like, well, Matt, that's stupid, like energy. But hear me out on this. Truth be told, you got to think of it. When you are in a poor energy state and you go into trainings, mm-hmm. even though you know what to do, you're going to do it like crap, right? I was just actually talking to an MLS player we work with today. And he goes, man, like my biggest problem is it's not that I don't know what to do. It's not that I don't know how to do it. I just don't feel mentally clear enough with energy. Like, I don't feel like I'm alert enough with energy mm-hmm. to be able to see what I need to see and make the plays I need to make.
Yeah.
So it's like, think about that. You're ready, but you're not optimized.
You can't pull it. You can't turn that theory into reality.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, if you think about it too, you might know the answer. If you've ever written a quiz or a test, and after, when you're in a better state, you look at it and you're like, why did I write that answer?
Yeah, I know. I hate that. I hate when that happens, but it is. It's that clarity and not feeling energized.
Yeah.
Like that's, one of the things eventually when we touch on it, that's the recovery side.
Yeah. And then the other side to it is it allows for more development. Mm-hmm. So if there's one thing I've seen rhyme true from all the teams we've worked with, all the pro athletes we've worked with, all the youth athletes and the NCAA and the junior athletes, young and old, male, female, if there is one thing I have seen that notoriously wins championships or breeds champions, it's the idea of consistent development, or I should say the philosophy of consistent development.
Yeah.
So these individuals that are constantly achieving are individuals who are constantly working on themselves.
That was the exact conversation that I had with an individual yesterday, a junior hockey player. He was deciding on whether he wanted to go. So it was his draft year, and whether he wanted to go stay at the team that he was on, that he was with, or another team came out of nowhere, and it made him think.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about it, and like he made his decision or whatever, but we got down to it, and it was like, man, so this year you showed that you can reach. You showed that you can reach, you can develop, and you can continue to push. For the next, because he's 16, 17 right now, 16. If you have a 20-year career, if you reset from zero every season and you reach and then you reach again and you reach again, you will always have control over what you're doing.
Well, and
always.
Yeah. And think about it too. Like those who don't perform well, if you really look deep into their work, it's because they're not working on developing something again. Like some of these guys that we work with who are like multi-million-dollar players are hyper focused on fine-tuning their craft.
Well, even
right?
Because they have like for some of them, they have extended year contracts, right? Yes, every season, you know, if you're being paid money, you should do well in this and that. But there are going to be some seasons where your line dips on the graph.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. But do you stay there?
Yeah.
You know, do you reach that next season? Do you reach that off season to prevent that from happening again? Like you have one season, if it doesn't go your way, you have the option to continue to move forward.
Well, and it's like so many players get, you know, people I should say get flustered or flabbergasted when there's a player who's really good throughout the season and then in playoffs they dip. And it's like, well, why is that? It's like, well, look at playoffs compared to the season, for example. The season, you have a day for some sports between games where you can work on things that you didn't like the night before.
Right.
You also can do that in many other sports like football, soccer, American football. You have the opportunity. When we're talking in the playoffs, though, where usually teams are cutting practices because the simple bout of recovery you don't have that much time to work on what you need to.
Yeah.
And you can't develop the way you want to, and then you don't perform the way you want to. So again, it's not that any of these players who are consistent are doing anything crazy. They're just mastering the basics and they're sticking to the basics consistently. So here's what this does and why energy and development are so important for your success. It leads to 5 basic things that allow for success. So what you have to remember is that being in a positive energy state and developing yourself will put you into a good mindset or into a good state. And you got to think of it. When you're in a certain state or a state full of self-belief, determination, and focus, you are able to go out there and crush it. If you, let's say, are in a state where you're not determined, but you're sure of your skills and you're focused, you're not going to push. If you're determined, but you're unsure of your skills and you're focused, you're going to push and you're going to try and do the right things, but you're not going to trust yourself. And if you are determined and you know what you need to do, but you're not focused, you're still not going to go at it because you're going to miss the fine details. You need all 3. So when you have this where you just do the basics well consistently, you put yourself into that state that you want to be in going into performances. And what we've spoken about many times on this podcast and with a lot of our clients, if you're going to be an athlete who dominates, you need to understand that game day starts 3 days before the game itself.
Yeah. And what's nice about this getting into state and having the energy to develop and stuff, you guys are going to see it's basic. It's simple. It's just make sure you check it off with the proper purpose and intensity.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So
that's all it is. So looking at it, let's talk about then the 5 basics you need to master if you're going to be super successful as an athlete. And here's the crazy thing. I'm going to forewarn everybody right now, but take it from me because take it from us, I should say. Like this is the tried and true proven formula with our players. This is no BS. This is no like, hey, we're reaching and we're trying overly crazy things. I'm going to challenge you if you're listening to this show right now, though. You are going to be face palming because of how simple these are, but the lack of discipline you have to do it. And then we're going to give you something to resolve that discipline issue. So basic number 1, and use this as a list, these 5 basics. That way we can go forward. So you need to have weekly intentions or targets or a desired outcome. That is the most simple, basic thing you can do. So what do I mean by that? It's very simple. That means that this week, I'm going to make sure my shot is better so I can use it better in a game. That is discipline. That is an intent that you have behind your week. Intention or target for the week is I'm going to work on, my top speed because coming into the game, I want to make sure I'm getting myself into better scoring positions.
Yeah.
I'm going to work on my hand movements as an offensive lineman because this week I want to be able to better, run block when it comes to it. That is intent. That is intent.
I've found too, if you are someone that has trouble getting it going after the weekend, whether it be, on Monday, it's like, when you do really well in the week, then you have your weekend, maybe your 2 days off or whatever, and then it's hard to reset it on Monday. I've noticed anyways, in some of the conversations that I've had, this is a great way to get you going again because you have a new purpose for Monday. You review it the night before on a Sunday if you didn't have a game, and then you go right into it. And it's a fantastic way. If you're an individual that sometimes has trouble getting it going on a Monday, this is a great way to do that as well.
Yeah. You have to go in every week. If you're going to be a top guy or gal, you have to go in every single week with an intention of what you want to develop. Don't go in there with the intent to score 5 goals. That is a byproduct. Don't go in there with the intent to have a shutout. That is a byproduct. It's ambitious, but it's a byproduct. It should be, what am I unsure of, or what am I not super great about right now? What can I work on? And if you plug that in every week where you're focusing on intentionally developing something, you're going to be good. Like even with us in our sessions, we have a target every week of what we want to accomplish with every single player, right? But it's so we know that the byproduct is always going to be positive performances, which it should be if you want to be a high performer. We are more obsessed though with the how to get there so that we can make sure we get there. Yeah. Right. Because so many times athletes get flustered and frustrated because it's like, well, I went into the week intending to score. And then it's like, well, I don't score. It's like, because you're doing it wrong. It's the same saying. Successful people have the same targets as unsuccessful people. Yeah. The difference with successful people is that they have different habits. That is what you're after. Developing a skill is a habit. Mm-hmm. It's an action. Whatever label you want to give it, you must be focused on that. So for example, with the NFLer, we went into the week focused on better covering a player in a specific way. He walked out that week because he bettered his footwork on covering a player with an interception. Simple, right? Was the intent to get an interception? No, it was to have tight footwork. Was the understanding byproduct, though, going to be it could potentially lead to an interception? Yes. The same way that when we prepare players, the question always gets asked, how do we have such consistent success with our clients? Because we know where they want to go, mm-hmm. and we focus on how to get there.
Yeah.
Right? So, it's, for example, if I am going on a trip and I know I want to drive from Toronto to, I don't know, Detroit, Michigan. That's great. But if I just focus on getting to Michigan, it doesn't work that way. If I focus on how much gas I need and what pit stops to take and how fast to drive and, who's coming in my car and what snacks I need to pack if I'm going to have those people come in my car, that is easy to accomplish your goal if that's the case. And for any high performer, I will challenge you now. If there's one thing I've ever seen hold any high performer back, it's always going to be fear. And I don't mean fear in a way of, oh my God, I'm so scared. I mean fear in a way of fear, like take the negative connotation away from the word. Fear just means you're unsure of doing something. You don't know what the outcome is going to be. So if you're focused on a skill and you're like, well, I'm unsure of my passing right now.
Yeah.
That's a really good thing to go focus on for the week.
Yeah. And if you really don't know what to work on, you take the target that you want to focus on for the end of the year. So like, let's say by the end of this season, if you're playing hockey, I want to have over 50 points. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know what you need to do for that week, you take, okay, for this week, if I need 50 points, this weekend I need the 2 points. That's the why you want or what you want, right? And then you have to break it down to the how. So then you have the how is what you need to do in order to get those points.
Skills to develop.
The skills to develop.
It's going to be one of these three things or combinations. Skills to develop, beliefs to shatter or build, or behaviors to change. So skill to develop could be, I need to develop the skill behind, like this individual, the NFLer, my footwork on this specific route. The behavior could be, I need to get to bed on time. I can't tell you how many athletes I've seen wildly change their success by sleeping more and feeling more energized going to performances. Or the last one is beliefs, where I don't know if I can do it. Usually that also comes back to a skill or something you're unsure of. So really, to even narrow it down even simpler, it's always going to be either a skill you need to develop or a behavior you need to change.
Nice. Perfect.
That's simple. Okay. Number 2, the next basic, leading into my last thing, you need to have weekly skills to develop that'll lead to success. So if you are somebody coming in here saying, well, Matt, everything's always good, I'm going to challenge you and say it can be even better, right? It's like Steph Curry. I will always use this because he's probably one of the best public examples of it. Steph Curry is somebody who shoots like 3 times more shots over the course of his career of practice 3 balls than he ever will in an actual game. Why? Because if he's shooting 15,000 practice shots over the course of a career, take that number light, by the way. Take it light, please. I don't need any backlash for that. It's a light number. And I'm shooting in my total career only 5,000 shots. You can see you will always need to be, if you're looking at truly successful people, they're always over prepared than they are under.
Yeah.
That's the reality, right? It's not that they're trying to game things or plan it. It's that they're over prepared. That way, when they go into their test or their scenario, they're able to handle it. So you need to have an outcome for sure. You can start with, I want to score more, if that's really what you need to do. But you need to break that down into a skill.
Yeah.
So if you do need to score more, the question you're going to ask yourself is, well, what's the skill or skills, plural, that I need to have if I'm going to get there? What do I need to be confident in? Because the other thing I'll challenge everybody on too is this. You can be confident one week and lack it the next week.
For sure.
Even if you know you have the skill.
Yeah.
It all depends on the repetition you put in and the skill that you work on.
Yeah. And I would even say here too, like if you, again, from a perspective of someone that maybe isn't at that level yet where they need to be, like more of a junior player, ask your coach for feedback. Like a simple way, or if you have game footage of your previous game, put some time into it, take a look at it and see, okay, here, I know I can work on this here. My decision making or maybe lack thereof because I'm not scanning well enough. Like that's an easy way to just find, okay, that's what I need to do. Especially if you're more of like, I would say a developmental stage of an athlete, like ask your coach for feedback. They know what they're talking about. And then also if you have to really dive even deeper, take a look at some film if you have it.
Well, there's 2 things I'll say. One, common logic can often solve your biggest problems. Right? Like basic logic. Like, okay. So I was talking to that MLS player earlier today and it's like, I just don't know why I'm not feeling good. It's like, well, what is it really that is giving you a challenge? And it's like, oh, you know what? Once we broke through it and talked about it, he's like, I don't know my teammates well enough to make the right passes. And that's why I hesitate. It's like, oh, look at that. You can develop that. Common logic, right? It's nothing crazy. Watch some film, study some tendencies. You're going to be good to go. The second thing is I have a theory that every limiting belief can simply be solved by bettering a skill. Hear me out. If you're worried about being able to deliver because your coach is putting pressure on you and that's the belief you have, I would then challenge you and say, well, what skill are you unsure of that makes you feel that you can't deliver? Right? Think about it. No certain or person full of self-belief is worried about that.
Because that would be...
Because they trust themselves.
Yeah, that would be the epicenter of your...
That's the root.
Of your...
That's the root
fear.
cause. Yeah. That's the root cause of your fear. Exactly. Yeah. If you say, well, I'm scared to go have that conversation with my coach, I would challenge you then and say, well, are you sure of the skills you need to have communication wise to have that proper conversation with your coach? 99% of the time it's no. Right? So my theory is anytime someone has a limiting belief or a fear, you can simply solve it by bettering a skill that you're unsure of. It's really that simple, right? Like, and this extends to any area of life. Running a business. I'm scared to go spend money on marketing. Why? Because I don't know how to market. It's like, I know it's a simplification of things, but that's my goal in this is to simplify it for anybody tuning in because oftentimes it's way too complex.
Well, and simplicity is where you can act too, right? Like you know the next step. It's not not hidden behind, 5 different formulas. It's
1,000,000%.
Next one.
Basic number 3. You got to have good sleep and nutrition.
Oh, I need to focus on this.
So this was the one that wildly set our NFLer ahead of everybody else. He goes, Matt, by simply drinking enough water and sleeping enough, I'm getting ahead of 90% of the guys. That was his quote. And then we manifested in further into what about skill building? He's like that too, and da-da-da. But the basic, sleep and nutrition. I mean, I'm not going to have too much to add on this other than the simple fact of it energizes you. And when you're energized, you perform better. You are an athlete. You need sleep to recover and you need food to recover. Eat it well. Don't cheat it, because if you do, it will show up in performance. That's simple. And I will also say, majority of the league lacks discipline and proper nutrition and sleep. So
I would say majority of the world.
The majority of the world, yeah. So that's why it's like this is a major get ahead for you if you're not doing it right.
Yeah, and if you have something nice to eat in the fridge, like think you just had a rough day, you come home, but you have that one nice leftover in the fridge. How exciting is that?
Yeah.
To eat.
Yeah.
Or if it has been eaten by someone else, how devastating is that?
Well, and you got to think too, like I think we give way too much credit sometimes to our competition.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, oh my God, they're all getting ready. They're going to beat me. Da, 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 da. It's like, if you're feeling this way, what do you think they're feeling like?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and think of the anecdotal story we're giving you all. This is an NFL player. This isn't happening at JV football.
Yeah.
Like, this is the top level in the world. Okay. Basic number 4. You got to do the mental work. Okay. And I'm not trying to say this biasly because we are, in the field. I am saying this because of the 5,300 athletes that have walked through our door. It is wild that more individuals don't realize basics in sport performance is you need to better your mental game.
Well, to be honest with you, I was taking a look at this more outside of sports and more of historical figures that have had some type of, you don't have to call it mental work, but some type of preparation.
Yeah, mental prep.
That mental preparation, reflecting, anything that went into their success. And why? How do I know that they did well? Because they're written about.
Yeah.
You have some type of, like, there's some, again, historical figures like tribes and stuff that had battle meditations. Vikings were they had that a lot. There were other ones that did breathing, visualization, reflecting in journals. This isn't new stuff.
No.
This isn't new stuff. And winners or people that have been successful in the past do this. If you can prepare to the best of your ability, or like you have a hidden advantage to anyone else that isn't doing this stuff.
Yeah.
And again, not just sports. This is
Life.
People of the past that have done this, that it's in records. Mm-hmm. It's there.
And it's not to say too that you need to become some kind of like monk,
no,
right? Meditating all the time.
Not that. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is, if this can help you prepare to feel less anxious going into something, or to feel more dominant going into something, why would you not do it?
Yeah. And it's, you know what? It's funny because at the root of that, every high performer slows down. And I'll prove it to anybody tuning in right now. If you think of some of the best in the world at what they do, and the best in the league, the LeBron Jameses, the Sidney Crosbys, the Connor McDavids, the Tom Brady's, all these individuals. Haven't you noticed they kind of walk to the beat of their own drum?
Well, yeah, they don't give a shit.
No, because they have they consciously, where everybody else is just running the rat race, they remove themselves from it.
Well, these guys know what they're capable of.
Yep.
They know what they're capable of because it's practice, because it's preached, and sometimes in some, I'll challenge anyone to listen to any of their interviews that they have. There's always, most of the time, there's something there. There's a nugget of information there that you can kind of see into their preparation.
You can take it.
Like, it's, again, this stuff is recorded, and not just in sports, but throughout history.
Yeah, in all areas. So mental work, let's cover the basics really quick, because it's funny. This was a point I wrote. There's somebody on our Instagram channel, and we post a lot. If you do check out our Instagram, it's at Molliteum, Molliteum. And it's funny because we're constantly posting like different things about how to mentally get ahead and such. And this one individual goes, he comments on our picture, this guy's always saying to give us, to visualize. What gives? Like, bro's always saying to visualize. It's like, dummy, with all due respect. There must be something hidden in this little secret then. If we're smashing it home, like, I hope everybody understands it's tuning into this podcast. We are not theorizers. We are not somebody who just comes out theorist that comes out with this idea of it should work. This is tried, tested, and true with over 5,300 individuals that we have applied this with. Tried it with, then didn't try it with. Did it with, then didn't do it with. Put this into play, then didn't put it into play. My point is, this is all experiential. This is all real. So if we say visualization is a key, it's not because we're trying to sound repetitive or lie or push a narrative. It's because it freaking works, man. Right? Like, that's the biggest thing. So when it comes to mental work, you don't need to be a deep meditative monk, right? But you need to practice something that allows you to mentally rehearse what you're about to do.
And find the thing that works for you.
Yes.
Because there's so many different things out there that you can try. Maybe they don't work, but you try them. And
if I were to give 3, breathe to slow down. Breathing will help you with anxiety if you're somebody who suffers with anxiousness. Breathing will help you physiologically lower your heart rate. That is important. Check out box breathing. Do 3 to 5 rounds of it. Consult a physician so you don't pass out. Go look it up on YouTube. It'll help a lot. Secondly, you need some form of a mental rehearsal. This form of mental rehearsal can come in the form of visualizing. It can come in the form of meditating if you would like. It could come in the form of even writing in your journal. Like, you know, when you used to see on The Simpsons and Bart was writing on the chalkboard, right? I might outdate some people, but if you had to write lines of repeating what you should be doing, write out perfectly how you should do it. But you need some kind of repetition mentally. And then finally, you need a mechanism of reflection. That could be speaking with somebody where you're consciously measuring your progress. That could be, and that's what we do a lot in our programs. It could be writing in a journal. It could be keeping notes on your phone.
Would film work?
Film works, but you need some form of reflection to compare where you were yesterday to where you are today based on the changes that you've made. So if said change for me was that I'm going to change my, wrist angle when I'm pitching a ball because that's what's going to help, I'm reflecting on, did that work? That is what the basics have done since the start of age and start of man, has been constantly taking notes on what worked and what didn't.
Hypothesis, then prove it right or wrong.
That's it. And here's what that does. The reason reflection's so important and where I see a lot of athletes cheat it because it's not sexy. Reflection, though, is where you build your real confidence. Because that's when you see, holy shit, I just went and said I was going to do this, and I actually got the result of that. Whoa, you mean I can do it? And it's recorded in a book? Wow. So if you're somebody who's lacking there, the mental work you need to do falls within those 3. Do some form of breathing, some form of mental repetition, and finally, some form of progress reflection. Last basic before we wrap up. You need to have purposeful and intense physical practices. Please understand this. If you are going in there and you are not doing the things you need to do with the right intensity, you're going to be like a deer in the headlights come game day. Now, if you're going in and you're running around like a fool with multiple intensities and you have zero purpose behind it and you're like a chicken with its head cut off, you are also not going to have success going into performances. You need to have a purpose or a skill you're specifically working on, which is what should be started at the start of your week with your intent. And then you need an intensity behind it, meaning you need to do it at game pace. Why? So you trust yourself. Plain and simple. And
this is where, like, you should be having fun with this purpose and intensity, because this is where, like I said before, this is where you put the theory
into practice.
And you get to actually see the results from what you've been doing all week.
Yeah, and this is and it's true too, right? Like, you see so many videos if you watch teams training. Like, I know I used to watch this all the time with soccer. There was a specific coach who he would constantly go through the specific patterns with strikers he would work with after practice or training. And the reason he did it, he said, because I want them to master those patterns under the right intensities of the scenario.
Yeah.
Because if I don't have a defender on the player, but there's a defender in the game and he's turning and it's easy without a defender, it's not realistic to what's going to happen in the game.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but like even past that, like for soccer itself, if you're not making that run intensely, you are not becoming that decoy anymore.
No.
It's all part of whether it be for development or for the team system or whatever. If the intensity isn't there, like, sit down.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
It's a waste of everyone's time.
It is, including your own. So to keep it simple with that, you want to do 5 to 15 minutes after practice on your own or with a teammate. But what you want to do is, the reason you want to take that 5 to 15 minutes, you want to recreate the scenario you need to build certainty or self-belief behind. So if you need to work on, let's say, your shot from in tight with a defender on you, there's your purpose and intensity. But you need to go do it on your own, because truth is, team practices are designed for the team, which that's great. It's going to teach you the systems and everything you need. It is not designed for you to individually get better at your skills. That is on you. You are the professional or wanting to be professional. You need to work that way. So to wrap it up, anything else you have to add to that?
No, I think that was pretty simple, pretty straightforward.
Keeping it simple. If you do the basics right, you can be more successful than the majority around you. And what are those basics? There's 5. Number 1, you need to have intentions going into every week of a skill you want to develop. Number 2, you need to make sure that you are working on these weekly skills in order to develop it so you can be successful. Number 3, get your sleep and nutrition down. You need it to recover and to be energized. Number 4, make sure you're doing the mental work. Again, one thing to breathe, one thing to do mental repetition on, one thing to reflect on your progress. And number 5, make sure every day you are working with purpose and intent on those skills on your own. So if you like this episode, please, tuning in from YouTube, like, subscribe, click the notification bell, tune into our channel. It helps us grow consistently. If you are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, it would help tremendously if you left us a review. It helps us grow. And finally, if you are somebody that wants to seriously better their mental game and get that extra edge, you can join the ranks of 5,300 other athletes from the youth to professional level to apply to work with us in a one-on-one setting. This is only for an application basis only, meaning it is not a free consultation. This is to see if we are a good fit for you and you are a good fit for us. We only take on 2 athletes a month. You can check it out. There's a link down below. In our 12-week base program for athletes, it's awesome. We fully customize something to you where you get a resilience profile. So that way we can see where you're going wrong. You get a program outline so you can see where exactly we're going to take you over the next 12 weeks. There's a portion in there where we obviously, of course, have our 9 sessions. There's obviously a part 2 in there where you can work with the Molliteum Pocket Coach. And on top of that, you have 16-hour-a-day access to whatever coach you work with, who's also working with your parent if you're a youth athlete to make sure everything is covered. You are guaranteeing your success. And most importantly, you're getting the results that you want. So with that being said, check it out. Links down below. You can subscribe or apply, to see if you're a good fit. Other than that, stay resilient. Put these into action. Don't just listen. You would have wasted about 40 minutes of your time. It's not worth it for you. Put these into action, get the results, and we'll see you in the next one.